Alrighty, greetings, all of my Chun-Li warriors. Welcome back to another Sage's Dojo session. This is going to be your host, Sage Armageddon, coming to you again in the foreground of Genbu Temple here. Now, this session is going to be a bit of an amalgamation of different ideas. It is a request from a fellow Chun-Li warrior. I was having a discussion with this warrior on the Chun-Li subreddit. They were having some difficulties when it came to things such as counter hits, punish counters, setups, such as some of Chun-Li's resets and some of her Okizeme, as well as how to use the training room effectively with punishes, things of that nature, right? So I want to go ahead and make a little bit of an amalgamation here. This is a specific response in order to aid this player, but anyone else, whether you pick Chun-Li or not, if it is useful to you, hopefully this can be something that's good for you, right? But yeah, that's pretty much going to be the lowdown of what we're doing here. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, before we get started, I want to go ahead and go over some of the things here. So let's go ahead and define a few things just for those that aren't as familiar. What are counter hits exactly? Well, counter hits are a specific hit property that you get on your opponent, and it is something that specifically happens if you hit your opponent as they are trying to press. So one of the easiest ways we can go ahead and get this to happen is, of course, in the training room, if you go to dummy settings, you can go to the third option, which is counter, and just click always counter hit, which means that every attack that you hit your opponent with is going to be a counter hit. But just so that you can see exactly what it is, we're going to go ahead and get some reversal settings here, and I'm going to get Ryu to, after taking damage, we're going to have Ryu press a button. We're going to have him do a medium punch. It could be anything in this situation. So he's going to take some damage, and then we're going to hit him. See, that's a counter hit. Now, this goes into frame data. This session is not going to be about frame data specifically. I can also come out with something as a bit of a companion session to this one, going over frame data and how to use it. But the basics of what you want to know with frame data is that when you make contact with your opponent, there's going to be an advantage reading. Notice how right underneath Ryu and Chun-Li's knees, there are two large bars there. And it says startup, total, and advantage. These are pretty much showing different values for us. And the ones that are going to be the most important for when calculating frame data in this situation are going to be startup and advantage, right? The one at the top is my bar, Chun-Li, and the one at the bottom is Ryu's. And you're going to see when I make contact with Ryu, you're going to see that, let's get him to stop doing that for a moment. You're going to see that there are going to be numbers here. I did this 4F stands for 4 frames. I did a 4-frame jab. I hit Ryu, and I have 5 frames of advantage. At the bottom, it says -5F in an orange-like color. That's showing that Ryu, since that is his metering, it shows that he is -5. So all that you need to know is that if you have a number that is blue, that means that you have advantage. If it is orange-ish or magenta-looking color, then that means you are negative. And the easiest thing to go about is that if you are negative, that means that it's not your turn. That means that in most situations, 90% of the time, if your opponent does something and you do something, they're going to win, right? So if I get Ryu to block and I get him to do a light jab, and I'm going to do a light jab too, we're just going to set it to block all. He's going to win every time, even though we both have a 4-frame jab. That's because I'm negative, right? I don't want to go too much into it. But if you have an orange number, you're negative. That means that it's not your turn. If you have a blue number, you're positive. That means that it is your turn. That pretty much the best way I can visualize it is that if you have an orange number, you got to, unless you know your opponent is not going to press something or they're going to do something different with their turn besides attacking you, you have to respect them. You have to respect and understand that if you press something, they can blow you up, right? And the same goes for when you have advantage against them. They kind of have to respect you. There are some caveats to this and outliers, of course, as there almost always are, but we're not going to get too much into specifics. Right? I just wanted to give a breakdown of that so that we can go into the counter hits a little bit more. So now that we have a little very basic breakdown of frame data when it comes to attacking and blocking and getting hit, what makes a counter hit usually is when you have an advantage over your opponent and they press something. Now, this isn't always the case. Sometimes they might do something that they shouldn't do. Like if I get Ryu to do this on block instead, and I just jab him, and let's go ahead and get him to block all, he's going to get hit. I don't have any frame advantage off of this. There's no frame advantage off of a single jab, right? But his move is so slow that even though it's his turn, he's forfeiting it by doing something that is too slow, right? That's a situation where you can end up getting a counter hit. And another situation is if you have frame advantage, and I'm going to show that here, we're going to turn this off for a minute. If you do this move with Chun, this is her 5 medium punch. If no directions, you just press the medium punch button. And if your opponent blocks this, you have 1 frame of advantage. So that means if me and Ryu both do a light jab, I win. As long as I time it correctly, I'm going to win, right? Notice how it says counter hit on the left side of the screen, right behind Chun-Li, how it says big counter hit there. That's because I fulfilled the requirements for a counter hit, which is to hit your opponent while their move is still in the works, while it's still starting up, right? Their move never completely came out if you get a counter hit, right? So, and why this is valuable is because, as you can see at the bottom there, let's go ahead and get Ryu to stop blocking for a moment here. If I land a jab on Ryu, I have 5 frames of advantage. That means if I want to do something else, it has to be 5 frames or faster, which there is nothing in this game in terms of attacks that is faster than 4 frames. 4 frames is the fastest offensive maneuver that you can do in this game, period, right? So if you land this hit, then you know that if you do something that's 5 frames, it will work. What's something that is 5 frames? Well, this is 5 frames. This is 5 frames. This is 5 frames, right? So either one of these will work. With something that is at 5 frames, that's 23 frame startup. So it will not combo, right? This is 8 frame startup. It will not combo. This will combo because it's 5 frames. This will because it's 5 frames. This will because it's 5 frames, right? So that's pretty much the gist of how that works, right? So whenever you see you have a big number there, if it's 4 or higher, that means that, assuming you are close enough to your opponent, that means you can follow up with something depending on your character, right? If it is lower than 4, you can still have the advantage over your opponent, but it will not combo, right? For example, I can't combo off of this because it's only 1 frame of advantage. There's nothing that is 1 frame fast. If there was, you would be able to get a combo off of that, but you can't, right? But you can still take your turn. And as we showed before, if Ryu blocks this and he tries to do a jab, he loses. This is a counter hit, right? Just so that for those that are wondering. Now, what's the difference between... Oh, I forgot to mention, the key thing about the counter hit, as you can see there, is remember how when I got a jab before, it was 5 frames. Remember that? Now, when I get a counter hit, it's 7 frames. That means that I get 2 more frames of advantage. And how that's valuable is it means that you can do bigger combos That means your options on what type of combos you can do are expanded and you can get more damage, right? So for example, off of this counter hit, I can do this. You're not able to do that without this situation. If you do not get a counter hit, this will not combo because it takes 7 frames to come out. Right? Follow? On a regular hit, this is 5 frames. So I need something that is 5 frames or faster. This move is 7 frames. So if I just hit Ryu and I try to go for a combo like this, he's going to be able to destroy my world and win the round, most likely, if you're fighting somebody that's competent, right? That's a big no-no. But if you get a counter hit, I'm going to go ahead and do this here. See how that combos? So that means you can do this combo here because you have the counter hit, right? Or if I show you how it is without cheating using the lab, right? And this is a sequence that peak players use with Chun-Li. After your opponent blocks this move, this is something that is done. See, it's like Chun-Li's like most bread and butter counter hit bait. That's what it's called. Counter hit bait is something that is specifically made to trick your opponent into trying to suppress something. Because this happens fast, and there are a lot of people, even people that know this is plus in the heat of battle, sometimes you don't register what happened. The pressure can be so intense that you might decide to press something and then you just get mollywopped, right? It's something that happens. I experience it. I'm pretty sure even pros experience it too when they're playing mind games or something like that. Something happens that they might not register, and then boom, your counter hit. It's just something that happens, right? So that's the value of a counter hit. Its main purpose is to allow for you to expand what moves can combo so that you can get more damage and more options, right? Like I said, without that, Chun-Li's combo potential is lessened. If you don't have a counter hit, the most that I can do is something like this, right? Or this, right? Or like something like this. The opponent is still standing. We have plus frames. We are positive in their face. So it is still our turn, but ideally you want your opponent to be knocked down in this game so that you can start your little your mini game on them to see if they guess right or not. Right? So that's typically the goal. You want to get a knockdown if you can, but getting plus frames in your opponent if they're standing is still good, but knockdown gives you more options, right? So this one we can't really knock them down unless we decide to spin meter. And if you're wondering why this combos even those 8 frames, is because if you cancel normals into a special move, the properties are different. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 5 frames in order to combo with this. See how that's 12 frames and it still combos just fine? Special moves have a different property with it. So this rule mainly applies, the rule of you have to match the number to the amount of frames of advantage that you have mainly applies to moves that aren't cancelable. See, you can cancel most of Chun-Li's normal moves into a special move, right? You see that? These are cancels. You're canceling the full animation in order to go into something else. But I can't do that off of this into this kick right here. It's not possible, right? So for moves like this is where this rule applies. We're not going to go too much into special moves and how those work here. But just in case you were wondering how you're able to get this, I just wanted to go ahead and explain that so that it's not confusing, right? So special moves kind of break the rules a little bit when you cancel from a normal into them. It doesn't have to match the amount of frame advantage that you have, right? So back to the main point. Our combo potential, in order to get a knockdown on our opponent, we have to spin meter like this or do something like this. We have to spin resources. Whoops, I'm dropping for some reason right now. Yeah, you have to spin resources, right? But if you get a counter hit, we're going to go ahead and cheat since we know how counter hit functions mechanically. I don't have to spin meter. I can spin that meter doing something different going into some of Chun-Li's setups, right? Meter management, things of that nature. It's just overall better if you are able to get a counter hit because you can convert. Now, if you get a counter hit on your opponent, it's always going to be 2 frames more than the amount of advantage you would have if it was just a regular hit. This is 5. Now it's 7. This is a -2, so technically it's Ryu's turn, even though we hit him. Are you able to guess what the advantage would be if you got a counter hit? If you said 0, you would be right. See that? This is +2. So how much advantage would you have if you got a counter hit on this? If you stated 4, you are correct. It's always going to be 2 more frames of advantage. This helps you so that you can understand that when you're going for a counter hit, you know beforehand that I'm going to have 2 more frames of advantage. Right. This helps you in the lab to come up with setups and combos that you wouldn't be able to do on regular hits. And that's pretty much going to be it for the counter hit. Now, what about punish counters? Punish counters are a little different. You notice that there is also a visual effect too. If you hit somebody, you just get a little bit of dust there. If you get a counter hit, you get sparks. If you get a punish counter, you get this giant red flaming spark, right? So there's a visual distinction as well as the flag behind me. We saw the counter hit flag. Now we're looking at the punish counter flag, right? So with that being said, what a punish counter is if your opponent completely whiffs them. Counter hit is if you are able to catch your opponent before their move even comes out. And we're going to go ahead and get Ryu to block all, and then we're going to reversal after block. We're going to get him to do a crouching medium punch. Right. So this is a counter hit. As you can see, his move is not coming out. Now, what if I get him to miss the move entirely? See that? It's a punish counter. That's what a punish counter is. Your opponent's move was able to come out, but you caught them while they were still in the recovery phase. During this period of time, your opponent can't do anything else. It is literally impossible for them to do anything else except for plug out of the game and close the client, right? That's pretty much all that they can do. But in terms of mechanically with their character, they can't do anything else. If Ryu whiffs a move, he can't do anything. So there's a recovery phase there. I said we're not going to go too much into the frame data, but there's a period of time, as you can see, before Ryu can act. Same thing with me. If you look at my inputs here, I'm mashing, but look how nothing's coming out. That's because I'm stuck in an animation. Same thing here. I can't do anything else. I have to recover first. During this time period, my opponent can absolutely demolish me. I can't move, I can't block, I can't do anything. Same thing goes for Ryu. So if he whiffs, we can get a punish counter. And the punish counter, just like the counter hit, it allows you to get even more frames of advantage and even more damage. So a regular hit, let's get Ryu to stop doing that here. And a regular hit on our jab, for example, is 5 frames. If we get a counter hit, we know that it's 2 frames more. You want to guess how much it's going to be on a punish counter? Well, this one you have to know. If you don't know, then it is what it is, right? Now, when you get a punish counter, it's going to be 4 frames higher than a regular hit and 2 frames higher than a counter hit. So it's going to be a +9. We're going to have 9 frames of advantage on a punish counter off of our jab. Right. So regular hit, 5. Counter hit, we add 2 frames to it. In the punish counter, we add 2 more frames. So 5, 7. Let's go to the corner so we don't have to keep walking up to them. And 9. You see that? So the total amount of more frames that you can get from a standard hit to a punish counter is always going to be 4 more frames. This gives you things that you can't do. In counter hit, we can do this, but you can't do this. This is 1 frame too slow. We have 7 frames. This is 8 frames of startup. It's not going to work. But if we get a punish counter, all of a sudden that works. You see that? That combos. That's a natural combo. That means you can do, you have more options on what combos and setups you can do as a result. And that's the beauty of getting a counter hit. Outside of just getting a guaranteed attack on your opponent in which they can't defend or block and you know it's guaranteed. Outside of that, you just get access to more stuff. Another one is Chun-Li's heavy punch or her 5 heavy punch. On hit, you have 2 frames of advantage. You can't do anything with this. There are no combos that you can do. You can take your turn virtually uninterrupted, but you cannot combo off of this. See? Now, what about if you get a counter hit? See that? Now this works because we are +4. You can also do something like this if you're close enough. See? Now, if you get a punish counter, how much are you going to have? If you said 6 frames of advantage, you are correct. That means that there's even more stuff that you can do. That means that you can do something like this now. See that? You have more combo routes. You can get more damage. You can also use this into this move. This is her stance medium hit. This does not work on a counter hit or a regular hit, but on a punish counter it does. So this means you can get even more damage than you were able to get before, right? So that's pretty much what it is for. That's pretty much what it is when it comes to Chun-Li, or just in general when it comes to regular hits, punish counters, and counter hits, right? That's the skinny of it. Hopefully it's making sense. That way now we can go into why we want to know how to use the training room with that, because Chun-Li is, as we just saw with her heavy punch, it's going to be different depending on what you do. So you don't want this situation to come up where you hit your opponent, because if they get hit with this heavy punch, it's because they're just not blocking. But let's say that you try to do a combo and your opponent can destroy you for that. You're wide open. They can do almost anything, right? If we were to, let's go ahead and do Chun-Li versus Chun-Li for a moment here so that you can see what I'm talking about. Oh, whoops, I meant I didn't block. See that? Punish counter. You can get a giant combo on your... Unfortunately, you can't do that combo, unfortunately. But you can do something like this. Whoops. Right, this is not optimal, but it's still a lot of damage, right? And I dropped it, but it's okay. But I think you get what I mean. So if we get Chun-Li to stop doing that here, you do not want this situation to come up, because you see what happens. I was able to demonstrate that. And why we want to know how to use the training room is so that we can quickly make the judgments to know what to do, because the situation and the amount of optimal damage you can get is going to change depending on whether you get a regular hit, counter hit, or a punish counter. If you get a counter hit, you can do something like this, or this, like we showed before. And if you get a punish counter, you can do a lot of different things, right? You have options. See that? So, because you have 6 frames of advantage. So, that's why it's important to be able to do that. And Chun-Li, because of the way that she is, with her stance mix-ups and all of that, you have to be able to make those decisions very quickly in the middle of a game. So that's going to bring us into how we're going to use the training room in order to set that up here. Okay. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to actually know our routing when it comes to setting up your offense, whether that's combos or just pressuring your opponent in general, right? Now, this isn't going to be an exhaustive list. I do have other dojo sessions going over these things in more detail, but I'll see what I can do here to try to make sure it's comprehensive. So, the key thing that we want to keep in mind here is that when we're using the character, some general rules of thumb that I can give to you that might help out is that you want to, for the most part, you want to use light attacks, low committal moves. For many reasons beyond just what we're talking about in this session, this will help you, even to the highest levels. You have the fewest openings, and it's the fastest things that you can do. Your opponent, unless you have a rhythm, or your opponent just throws a Hail Mary haymaker out like this, they are not, oh man, his reaction speed is so god tier, he punished me. Unless you are fighting like a super monk with a Sharingan on every orifice of their body, they are not going to respond and react to you doing this, right? I promise you. If they do react to this, quote unquote, that means that they either caught your rhythm because you're being predictable. Maybe you're doing something like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you're doing that, then they can catch the rhythm and they can catch you, right? Or your opponent just threw the attack out and you just happen to get hit. So those are the only options. They're not going to see you do it and then press a button and punish you for doing this. That's virtually impossible, right? So, but you want to use these types of attacks here in general. You don't want to use, with Chun-Li, if you're trying to catch a whiff, if you're trying to catch your opponent whiffing something, you're usually going to use these attacks right here. This attack, this attack, this attack, right? You can also use this one, but these are for very big whiffs. These are for if your opponent does something crazy like this. Well, not this, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and record that again. Something like that. Your opponent does something like that. That's where you would punish it with something like this, so that you can get, and she freaking ducks under that. See that? So there you can get maximum damage. But generally speaking, you don't want to really throw these moves out unless you have a very specific matchup, specific purpose for doing so, right? These are for punishing giant whiffs or mistakes that your opponent makes that are obvious, right? So, that being said, how we're going to approach offense with this character is we want to understand a lot of different things. Like I said, we're going to be jumping between a lot of topics because this is requested. We're not going to divulge into any of these topics in the greatest detail, but just to try to help the one that requested this session, right? So, see how we have 6 bars of meter. The way you want to treat things, especially with Chun-Li because she's very meter hungry, is that if you have 6 bars, 5 bars, 4 bars of meter, you're A-okay. You can kind of do what you want. If you start in the game ready, fight, you can do something like this in order to get some pressure started on your opponent. But if you're at 3 bars or lower, I want you to get into the habit of not doing something like this, because you're gonna get too close to bar. The reason why we're gonna go ahead and make this fixed for a moment so that I need to get this is the super arts gauge, my apologies. There we go. We want that to not move. And because what's going to happen here is that, actually, let me see. We're going to, it's going to refill. I don't think I can get it to the point where it, let's try that. Okay. So we made contact with our opponent, so we got a little bit of meter there, but you want to assume that this is going to burn you out because you have so little. When you have that little bit, anything that you do after that pretty much is going to burn you out, right? So you don't want it's a little difficult to show this because of the options that we have here. She's getting the bar back. Let's try going to 2 bars. Pretend that this is 3 bars. See that? We're burnt out. The reason why I have to do it this way is because when you make contact with your opponent, you get a little bit of meter. But we're going to pretend we have exactly 3 bars. We're going to wait right till it gets there. And then, boom. You get burnt out. And when you're burnt out, you're in a bad situation. Pros and high-level players will always tell you to avoid burnout. Chun-Li especially is completely frail and burnout. I'm surprised you just don't see KO on the screen when this character goes into burnout because she is like virtually useless in burnout, right? So her tools make it very hard to play keep out when you're in burnout, right? But you don't want to go into burnout. So when you have this many bars, you want to play a little bit more passively. You don't want to be spending meter. You don't want to do drive rush cancel because it costs 3 bars. You can do things like this depending on if it's a good situation. You can use parry, of course, but you don't want to do this because you don't want to burn out, right? So if you have 6 bars, you can do what you want. And what we're doing is when we're playing neutral or whatever, we're going to try to do something to our opponent depending on the situation. If they do something that allows us to punish them, let's say if Chun-Li's doing this and she messes that up, right? That doesn't combo. That's not a good. Don't do what I did there. Something like that, right? Or something like this, which is going to be the more common option to help get them to the corner. Right. And for some reason, I'm starting to drop that again. Probably that training with my eyes completely closed. But yeah, I hopefully you can see the point that we're making here. So we're playing neutral. She does something crazy and we punish her. And we're going to take them to the corner, right? We're going to use 3 bars because we have the 3 bars. Now, if this is where my bars are at, and Chun-Li does that same thing, this is more along the lines of what I'm going to do right here. If you're close enough to get this to combo. Or you can do this. This is probably easier. Right? You don't want to use meter. If that is too hard for you, you can probably do something like this until you get more acclimated, right? Something like that. Or you can walk up to them and do that, if they're that predictable, right? So, but you notice how I'm trying the hardest that I can to avoid burnout. That's the key thing. That's the point that I want to stress. So, if you're playing, eventually you want to try to... The goal of this game is to get your opponent into a guessing situation and to snowball from there. For reasons I'm not going to go too far into in this specific session, I discussed this in multiple sessions that I have, especially the struggle of using Chun-Li one. If you haven't seen that one, check it out. Chun-Li does not have a throw loop, so without going too far into detail, you can't snowball characters like Ryu and Ken and Terry and stuff like that, and Mai, because you can't throw loop them all day, right? She doesn't have throw Oki. She can't actually follow up off of her throw. If you do, it's fake. And trust me on this, I know someone like Broski or another pro would say, never assume that your opponent knows. But you're either fighting somebody that's really good and they know, or you're fighting somebody that's not all that strong and they're going to mash when they wake up. So you're still going to get hit no matter what. That's usually how it is. I do try to get away with doing fake stuff against people like this, and then I just end up getting hit like that, right? So it's, as you can see, I didn't even have to set the bot. It's so easy to punish that the bot just knew to do it without me even having to say anything. But jokes aside, she can't continue to snowball her opponent. But that's the goal of this game. So you want to get the closest to being able to do that you can. So you want to do to your opponent the same things that you want to avoid. You want to avoid your opponent having plus frames in your face. Whether that's by getting hit, whether that's by blocking a move that gives them plus frames, whether that's blocking a jump in or getting hit by a jump in. If we get Chun-Li to just block them all, this is why pros tell you to, this is why you always hear anti-air, 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 anti-air. The reason why people beat you over the head with a stick telling you to anti-air is because when your opponent hits you, if If they get a clean hit, obviously this is something that's going to happen. And I don't know why I keep dropping this combo. Right. This is something that's going to happen. And if you block it, you have to guess now. Without getting too much into the specifics, you have to guess if they're going to throw you or if they're going to press buttons. You know how it is fighting Ken and Ryu when you're in this situation where Ryu does Shogeki or Solar Plexus, and you're pressing buttons trying to get out, and then you just start to take more damage because they're counter hitting you, and now you're in the corner, and now you're getting throw looped, and now you're dead, right? You know how it is. When somebody jumps on you like Ryu, they jump on you like this, and then next thing you know, you're getting grabbed, and then you're getting grabbed again and again. You want to avoid people being plus in your face, and inversely, you want to be plus in your opponent's face. You want to have frame advantage in their face. So if you're in the neutral here, sure, it's a good idea to try to catch some whiffs if you can, but take it from me, you don't really need to worry. Even though Chun-Li is supposed to be the whiff punish queen, whiff punishing is not something that you need to know how to do until you get to like Ultimate Master and beyond, right? Like I fight plenty of people, even in Ultimate Master, that don't whiff punish. That's actually hard because you have to be able to control the pace of the game. You have to be able to force your opponent to push a button and then punish it, right? That's kind of tricky to do because you have to be good at reading people. You have to be good at knowing how to trigger them to do things. And you also have to be very good at making the proper read because there's no guarantee your opponent's going to do anything, right? So they might just look at you when you try to make them whiff something. So it's very hard. So you don't have to worry too much about that until you get to like super high level. But you still want to get some type of offense started. So what you want to be able to do is get in. You want to be able to drive rush cancel. That's why these normals are considered some of Chun-Li's best, right? Because if you make contact with your opponent, whether they get hit or not, it doesn't matter. You're in. They have to respect it, right? Now, technically speaking, your opponent can do something like this. Let me go ahead and we're going to do block reversal, and we're going to do a OD Tensho kicks. They technically can do that, but this doesn't happen as often as you think it would unless you're being super obvious, right? A lot of people don't do this. I rarely fight people that actually do this. Right? So, but most people that you're going to fight, and even people that do know how to do this, they might only do it if you're being obvious, right? Let's go ahead and turn that off for now. Most people, if you make contact with them, they're not going to just do that. So typically, you can go into your offense off of that, even though technically speaking, they can do a reversal or a super through it, right? And characters that don't have reversals and or don't have super gauge can't do it at all. So, like, if you're fighting Marissa or something and she doesn't have any super gauge down there in the lower right-hand corner, I'm pretty sure she can't do anything about this, right? So certain characters can't do anything about it. So this is something that whether your opponent gets hit or not, it doesn't really matter. We're going to go ahead and have the opponent do a random block. Right? And that's a part of how we use the training room here, is that see how we in the dummy settings we set the block to random? We don't know when the opponent is going to get hit or blocked. So this allows for us to practice our hit confirming, which is the prerequisite to getting into counter hit practice. Right? You want to know what your sequencing is if your opponent gets hit. Right? You can do something like this. This is probably the go-to thing to do right here for more beginner to intermediate players, so to speak, right? It's what I'm doing here is if my opponent it gets hit, I'm following through with the spinning bird kick. If they block this into this move right here, let's go ahead and get Chun-Li to block off for me. If you do this and they block all of this right here, we're just going to end it there because we're out of range because of the pushback. And they only have 2 frames of advantage. There's very little that they can do at this distance with that, right? So they technically can do something, but there's a lot of pushback, right? So you can do something like this because since you have 5 frames of advantage after that, they can't really interrupt you, right? If they do, they're going to get counter hit. Very simple, like we were discussing earlier. So you can do this, and if they block, you just end it there, or you can do something like this. That's not necessarily real, but it's okay. Doing fake things is something you can do in this game, as long as you are not predictable with it, right? If you're fighting somebody that's good, they can blow you up for it. But fake pressure is something that is done at almost all levels. Right? It's a fighting game. We can sit here and theorize about the numbers all day long, but when things are happening so fast in front of your face, you're not always going to respond appropriately to everything that happens, right? But sometimes people get away with stuff. But you don't want to do the spinning bird kick. Because like we discussed earlier, you're going to get comboed and die, right? So you want to make sure that you are able to hit confirm to tell if your opponent is being hit by what it is that you are doing. And you can also do this off of her crouching medium kick too. You can do it over her crouching medium punch, but you're probably, if you're thinking about trying to do this, it's honestly better to just do it from further away with these moves, right? So this sequence is something that you can do if you're like still learning the character, because it's gonna work. It's gonna help to alleviate your mental so that you're not overwhelmed with all of the different things going on. Like, oh man, I have to do a different combo. A different sequence now because they're being hit. Like, you don't want this type of situation to happen where if they're blocking, you do something like this. And if they get hit, you do something like this. You don't want that sequence to happen if you're starting out. And even for somebody that's experienced with a character like me, that's still a little tricky. Right. It's still a little bit tricky to change exactly what you're doing. I can do it. As you can see, it's a little tricky. Requires some focus. But it can be done because between the drive rush, there is enough time. But if this is too much to do at first, if you're just getting started or you're still developing, then just do the same sequence for now. And that same sequence is going to be this. Whether they're blocking or being hit, it doesn't matter. And very simple. If they are being hit, you're going to follow through with this. Right? That's what you want to do. If they are blocking, you're going to just stop there or go into something like this. Whoops, I didn't finish that. It pushes them back and you're safe. They can't punish you for that. Right? So this is a way to get your offense started from this range. Right? No whiff punishing required. You just want to make contact with your opponent. Right. So just get used to doing that. And the first thing you want to be able to do is, once you know what your sequence is, you want to practice doing this because you want to make sure you understand this is what you're trying to do before we get into anything else. And then we can turn the dummy by going to our settings here, and we can go ahead and set to have the bot block randomly, and then we can practice this. Now that's how it's the same regardless. Let's get Chun-Li closer so we don't have to keep walking up to her. Well, Armageddon, what do you do if your opponent gets hit on the last attack. Well, I'm not going to go too much into hit confirming here. I do have a session for that. But you want to assume that if your opponent blocks this move into this, if they block these two moves, you want to assume that this is going to get blocked too, even if they do manage to get hit by it. So if these first two hits right here are blocked, you want to assume, especially if you're just starting out, you want to assume that your opponent is going to block this. So you're going to behave as if they blocked all of it. So if you do this, and then your opponent randomly gets hit by this move here, by the time, if you see them block these two moves, you're going to assume that they're blocking all of it, right? If they get hit by this move or this move, then you know you're good. See that? She blocked them all. There's not enough. There's very little time to react by the time you get to the third attack, which is this one. So unless you have very fast response time, you want to assume that they blocked all of them if they blocked the first two attacks here. See, this and this. It's like, oh, they blocked this into this, so they're probably going to block this. I don't have enough time to really respond off of landing this to know if it's safe to do spinning bird kick. So I'm just going to end it like this. Or like this, like we discussed, right? Whoops. Yeah, I gotta drive rush to do that. Right, like this. So, first two hits, plenty enough time for you to be able to tell. But you have the more random block, and you just practice doing this. Which again is her 4/6 medium punch, or her 2 medium kick, drive rush cancel, 5 medium punch into 2 medium punch into a heavy spinning bird kick, or medium spinning bird kick, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. They have different properties for setups, but you generally want to do heavy for the most corner carry and the most damage. Right. So now that we have that out of the way, and I know this is pretty long-winded, but it's very important that we go through these fundamentals here before we get into everything else. So when we're using the training mode here, now that if you are very comfortable with being able to hit confirm, that you could also turn on a computer to fight you back and practice. This is more similar to an actual live opponent, and you can actually practice what you just learned. Try to land it, and try to make sure that you do the appropriate thing depending on if your opponent gets hit or not, right? And you just want to focus on what it is that you're trying to do until you get comfortable with it. See that? See that? So, yeah, that's hopefully you get the point. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to practice getting counter hits. Probably the easiest thing to practice this with Chun-Li is, if you can't do this sequence into spinning bird kick, that's okay. That is not expected because it's quite execution heavy. This is not easy to do because of the timing and the processing of your mental stack that you have to do. But you can do this jab into a crouching medium kick. And something that you can do for starters is, obviously, as we showed before in our demonstrations when demonstrating what a counter hit is, we were able to show that this is 5 frames on a regular hit. So if it's not a counter hit, we can't connect this move. We can only connect something that's 5 frames or faster, right? If it's a counter hit, you can do this. You don't have to do the spinning bird kick if you're not comfortable doing it. Right. You can just do something like this. Or if you really want to practice your combos, you can do something like this. Right? Or something like this. You don't specifically have to do this setup. You can do something like this. You can do something like this. Right? Either of those are fine, or even something like this. It's okay. You don't have to do this if that's too hard for you. Now, when it comes to being in this type of when it comes to the way of thinking about it when you're in this situation of why you will want to do this sequence is that if you think about it, when you're fighting your opponent here, they're almost certainly not going to do something crazy like this or this at this range or use these moves at this range because there's just no reason to do so. They're going to do something like this, like this, like this. They might jump, they might do drive impact, but they're not just going to I don't think they're just going to randomly just do this right out in the neutral, right? Or do something like this right in your face. It's very unlikely if you're fighting somebody that's competent. If you're fighting someone that's not competent, it should be a relatively easy win. So, with that line of thinking, when you have somebody right in your face, they're going to be doing things like jabbing and things of that nature. So when you're setting this up and you get a counter hit and you force your opponent to block something, let's go ahead and put this on block all. And then we're going to make sure Chun-Li is set to do a light punch after blocking. And if you do something like this, they're going to most likely do a jab like we just discussed a moment ago. And if you can beat the jab, this beats every other normal move they would do. They would have to do a reversal, a super, or something like that in order to deal with this. If they try to do anything else that is not those things, they would get blown up. Technically speaking, they can use drive impact. However, you can just counter DI with your own drive impact, right? So that's not something that we want to count because it's something that could be countered. They can technically parry, but that most likely won't work out too well for them. It's very hard to parry a jab, right? So, that being said, they're point blank in your face, they're most likely going to do a jab, which you can beat this sequence, right? Or like we stated, you could do something like this if necessary, if doing the rest of that is too much for you. So, hopefully that makes sense. And, if you're fighting somebody competent, they're not going to do stuff like that because there's just no reason to do it. They're going to use buttons like this, this, and this, or they're going to throw you. So at this range, you know that they're going to do the fastest thing that they're going to do, which is this. Now, if you do this, let's go ahead and turn this off for just a brief moment. If you do this sequence outside of mashing a reversal or a super, your opponent cannot interrupt you with anything. If they use drive impact, you can technically counter that. They can parry it, but that is very hard to do, right? They're almost certainly not going to get a perfect parry on this because of how, it's pretty fast. So in terms of the best options that they have, their best options are to block and see what you do. And the reason why is because even though it's a 4-frame jab, we have a 1-frame advantage. So our jab is going to come out before Chun-Li can do hers. So ours is going to win. Just so you can see what she's doing. She's doing a jab. All right. We're doing the same move. Obviously, if we do something else, we're at risk of trading or being hit. This will trade. Anything slower than this move, I will lose, even though I have frame advantage. Right. But when you do this, you know that none of Chun-Li's other normal buttons, she can't do this, 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 she can't do this. None of her other normal buttons will work. None of her special buttons will work unless it is a reversal or a super. Her options are limited. So your opponent is most likely going to try to jab you if they do anything at all in this situation. And we're trying to figure out, okay, so Armageddon, how am I supposed to know that I get a counter hit off of this? It's too fast. Right? What if they just get hit? They just stand there and they get hit in the face like this. Gonna turn block off. This isn't gonna work. I can't. This is, you know. I can't get. Oh, I got a counter hit. Now go into this. Isn't that risky? Well, the thing with this is that this sequence is too fast. Unless you are very predictable. If the fight starts ready fighting, you just walk up to your opponent and they don't know this is their first time fighting you. You just do this. That's too fast for them to register what's happening. This is only superhumans can react to something like this, right? Normal people, even above average people, even people with a reaction speed of 150 milliseconds aren't going to react to this. It's too fast. You need a Sharingan within a Sharingan to react to something like this. So if you just do this until oops, you can pretty much expect this to be a free sequence every time, right? And let's get Chun-Li to stop attacking here for a moment. You can pretty much guarantee that this is a free sequence every single time. Whether they block or get hit doesn't matter. So you're always gonna just don't be too. You don't want to be because you're gonna have a predictable rhythm. But if you're playing unpredictably, you're not being obvious, and every now and then you just throw this out, they're not going to be able to respond to that. They have to take a lucky guess, if anything. It's super fast. So when you want to go for this sequence, just commit to it. The chances of you being punished for doing this are slim to none. It's virtually impossible, right? So a bot can do it, but a human player is not going to do that unless you're predictable or they get lucky, right? So you're gonna do this every time, and by the time you get to the crouch medium kick, you should be able to register that you got a counter hit by them. And to showcase this, I'm gonna put this on random. You might see a punish counter come up, but you can still get that combo regardless. Just pretend that it's a counter hit. Right, because as we discussed, punish counter is somebody with something. You cannot get a punish counter on somebody that's standing completely still and they're not in recovery, or somebody that is pushing a button and you hit them before the button comes out. It's impossible to get a punish counter. The lab just allows us to do this, right? This is technically cheating. Pretend that punish counter isn't here, even if you see it pop up. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to watch for that counter hit flag, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this specific combo only when I get a counter hit. If I don't get a counter hit, I'm going to end it at the crouch medium kick, and that's it. All right, ready, go. And that technically should have worked. However, that last sequence, if you rewind it just a little bit, I mistimed my crouch medium kick. But let's continue. See, I mistimed it again. Mistimed it. Mistimed it. It's tricky to do. But you see, the overwhelming majority of the times, I'm actually linking this together without too many issues, right? And how are you doing this? I'm paying very close attention to the punish counter effects around the character, as well as the big giant flag on the left side of the screen there. All right. This sequence together, this is too fast on its own, and this is almost too fast on its own. But together, these two moves together, that's plenty enough time to be able to react. So if you commit to doing this, no matter what, when you decide that, okay, I'm going to jab and the crouch medium kick, and you do it, that's plenty enough time for you to be able to tell if you got a counter hit or not, as you can see. See? And I messed that one up. Okay. These two moves together gives you plenty enough time. It's kind of like you're basically hit confirming, except you're hit confirming on the counter hit. So it's combining both of those things that we were discussing earlier together, and I messed that one up. That was a goof. That was the first big giant goof that I did, but it's okay. See? These two moves together, if you always do this, it's plenty enough time by the time you get to the crouch medium kick to be able to tell if they got counter hit or not. See? And if that's too, like I said, I don't expect you to do that. So we can do something like this into the let me go ahead and demonstrate it first. Do something like that, right? All right, ready? I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna do random counter, except our combo is gonna be a little different. Ready? Go. Whoops. A little bit of brain farting there. Apologies. I'm not used to doing this combo, so this is not muscle memory trained. Now, if you do it, the cool thing about this is that even if you don't get the counter hit, you can still kind of drive rush cancel into something, like we gave earlier with the demonstration. Remember we said even if our opponent blocks, you can do something like this. See how all the dots are connecting? So you can still technically do this even if you don't get the counter hit, right? That's why you see me doing that. But if we were to try to restrict ourselves, the goal is to only end at a crouch medium kick if we don't get a counter hit. Right, see? I think we get the point. I've been successful enough with doing it for us to be able to see that you can definitely respond to that, right? So, and as we were able to demonstrate, that's a part of the way that you can train this, by setting the bot to random in the counter section in the dummy setting. This will give you a random property between a regular hit, a counter hit, or a punish counter. So, punish counter, you don't want to worry too much about that. Pretend it doesn't exist, because you can't get a punish counter unless you are punishing your opponent. Right? It's just the random. I can't random select. Actually, I think I can. You actually can turn the punish counter off. I'm very used to using the training mode, but I never actually checked that out. So you actually can turn that off. My apologies, but what we were doing before is still applicable. Right? It's still going to be the same thing. So we went ahead and we turned off I've never noticed that option before. That's it. The training room is so extensive that I'm still learning a few tricks here and there too. So if you're still learning the training room, it's fine, right? There are all types of cool things that you can use the training room for. So I just found that out now, so I don't have to worry about the punish counter flag anymore. Now it's just going to be a random hit or a counter hit. There isn't going to be no punish counters, right? So my mistake for that earlier. But even if you don't have this option disabled, it's okay, because it's pretty much the same result either way it goes, right? So, but it does look like you can turn that option off. So hopefully you see the point. These two are one sequence. This is enough time for you to be able to react, right? And this is how you can train the counter hit. Like we discussed earlier, you want to know what it is that you're trying to practice. You want to have intention. What is it that I'm trying to combo or do off of a counter hit, and why? You want to know why. Obviously, you can't get a counter hit if your opponent blocks. You can only get it if they get hit, right? So now that we know what our counter bait move is, there are other situations where you can practice getting counter hits too. And if you want to be able to tell what that is, we can go ahead and select the opponent to block all in the dummy settings, and then we can head to reversal settings and block reversal, and we're gonna have Chun-Li do a light punch, right? This way you can really test it. We already know about this, but what about other situations that give us plus frames, like this? We're +5 if our opponent blocks that. What can we do? But we can do a lot of different things because you have so much frame advantage off of a drive rush 5 medium punch, right? As you can see, you have so much frame advantage. If you go into a jab, your opponent is jailed. They can't press anything. They can't mash. This is a situation in which they can't do anything at all. They can't mash out of that. They can't super. They can't use their level 3. They can't parry. They can't drive impact because they're in so much block stun that they can't respond, right? But if you do something else, they can. And Chun-Li's choosing to do a jab, but she's being hit because we have so many plus frames. There are a lot of different options that you can do. Unfortunately, this is 11 frames. It's a little bit too slow, so you can't use that. You will lose to the jab. But what about if you jump? This is a jailing situation, right? So experiment with things, see what you can get away with. Usually in this situation, you can also go for a throw, right? See, this is counter hit bait for this move, which is her 2 heavy punch. This is too slow. Even with 8 frames of advantage, it's too slow. So, right, this is 7 frames, so you can do something like this. The frames are changing, it seems. Or maybe I delayed it. I might have delayed the kick before, so... Yeah, a lot of these jail, as we can see here. I think I just mistimed it, unfortunately. I did it too late. Yeah, that's what it was. If you mash this right after they block the jumping attack, they can't do anything. They're jailed. Right. So, you have so much advantage off of this there, you can't really counter hit bait too easily with it, but you can do it with this. This is beating a jab. You have so much frame advantage that they can't even jab you. Right? So that's another situation where you can counter hit bait. You can counter hit bait with sequences in which you have frame advantage, like this one right here. If your opponent blocks this and you go into stance light hit, they cannot interrupt this with a regular button. They have to mash out of it. See how we have the bot here? We set it under block reversal settings. We had them set to do something. You can pick anything. You can pick a heavy punch if you want to know what to do. If your opponent is going to do a heavy punch, which you can get away with counter hit. But you typically, for most scenarios, just doing a light punch is fine, because if you can beat the light punch, you can beat literally anything that they do, right? That's pretty much how you're going to use the counter hit setups. You can also have them do nothing to simulate randomness. You don't know if your opponent is actually going to press, right? Now, what's happening here is, as I stated, this sequence is technically fake. A bot's going to punish you for this because it's a bot. A real person isn't going to do this unless you have a cadence or a rhythm to it, right? So the bot is punishing us for doing this sequence in specific, because if they block the jab and they decide to attack before the crouching medium kick, they can't interrupt it. But if you set the opponent to do nothing or a light jump, it simulates the randomness that we need. And of course, as we showed, you can also, let's turn these off right now. You can also go over here. And as we showed with these options right here, we can go ahead and do random, and then we can set how we want this to be. Right. Let's go ahead and we also have it random. Let's turn random block. Let's turn block all on. Let's turn block all off. And we're gonna go ahead and training that we did before. Same thing. Right. That's how you can use this to simulate testing your setups and things of that nature in order to test for regular hits or counter hits, right? Let me see. You can also put random block too if you really want to test things out. Yep. And if you want to know how I sequence my things, um, keep in mind you have to you want to make sure you know your sequencing. You want to know your Oki setup and all of that stuff before you attempt to do this. You want to know what you can do and what you're most likely going to do and train it and develop it. So, like we discussed before. And then what you can do is you can set the bot to, we're going to have the bot do nothing or a light punch on block. We're going to have the bot do a light punch or do nothing when they get hit. So this is, if your opponent gets hit, they will retaliate. That's what that's what these settings are for. And you also have wake up reversals too. So if your opponent is getting up off of the ground, you can set what they're going to do. Right? So we have block reversal. If the opponent blocks, they will either do nothing or do a light jab. If the opponent takes damage, they will either do nothing or do a light jab. And what you can go ahead and do is practice your sequencing. Right? Depending on, and like I said, you want to train to make sure you know what to do after everything that it is that you're trying to do. And then you're going to go ahead and sequence this. This is one of the next steps toward before fighting a real person, right? Whoops. And notice that we also have, we're going to put random block on, and we're going to put, we're not going to have random counters because we're going to be able to make the counter hits by setting our opponent to do something after blocker being hit. So you don't have to have your counter hit settings on anything specific. Just put it to standard. It doesn't have to be random. And we're going to do random block to simulate of fighting a real person in terms of them being hit or not. And then we're just going to let it go. And you're going to behave how you would in an actual match when you're hitting an actual person, right? And that shouldn't have traded because I was +1, but I might have mistimed it. Just so that we can go ahead and see what happened there. I'm going to go ahead and get the, I'm going to go ahead and knock the opponent down. See, I'm supposed to win that exchange because this is something called a meaty attack. I'm +1. I have 1 frame of advantage. If you do a heavy Hosenshu after a heavy or a light spinning bird kick. So if you do a combo, you end it in light spinning bird kick or heavy spinning bird kick, you can get a heavy Hosenshu to get 1 frame of advantage. Right? That's what happened there. Chun-Li somehow beat me probably because I mistimed it, but you have 1 frame of advantage, so you're supposed to win if you do a jab, right? But let's go ahead and turn the settings back on. And we're going to turn random block back on, and let's go ahead and sequence it. See? Like I said, I know my sequencing. This is all stuff that I have developed over a long period of time, so I already know this stuff. If you're not familiar with this, you want to make sure you know what it is that you're trying to do. This is almost as if it was a real person. You notice that, right? Oh, that's too far, unfortunately. Right. And that wasn't a counter hit, so I can't do anything with that, unfortunately. And we got interrupted there, that's fine. Because sometimes that will happen. See how I'm maneuvering? I didn't do a combo ender because my opponent blocked. Or I will act depending on if my opponent does something and they get counter hit. Something else that you can, some of these sequences will require for you to put this on random. So it will require for you to put it on random and make sure that you have this set up depending on what it is that you're trying to do. So if you're trying to do something like this to start the game, you want to know what your options are. See? But in general situations, you can actually leave this off. That was a big no-no. Sometimes I take risks like that. If you're fighting people online, sometimes they might assume that you're not going to finish it, so you could catch them off guard with it. But see? This is almost as if I'm fighting a real opponent. You see, that's simulating somebody trying to press their way out of it. And of course, you can make this even more hectic by doing things like this. Let me see. Let me go ahead and we're going to do OD tensile kicks. I'm going to add that to the mix. And we'll even add it here just in case I do something that's fake. And this is going to put you on your P's and Q's because you're not going to be able to get away with as much fake stuff. See, because that can happen. This is fake, and I could get punished for doing that. We're doing our Okizeme setups. See? So this is a good way for you to practice trying to bait. See that? That's almost like a real player, right? Sometimes you'll be doing whatever Oki it is that you're doing, and your opponent will decide to mash out. You just don't know, right? They could have mashed out there. Like I said, this is if you're trying to target and specifically add that extra variable in there so that you can get used to shimmying to bait out somebody doing reversal. But if you're just trying to get used to training counter hits, you can turn off these OD reversal moves and just have your opponent either do a light jab or do nothing on both block reversal and reversal after damage settings, and just follow through with whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? You see, interrupted something that was fake. A real player might not have done that, but it's okay. See, a real player's not going to interrupt that. I get away with this all the time online. I get away with this sequence right here all the time online. It's fake, though. Right. Or something like this. Or if you think that they're going to do that, you can do something like this. This is more of a mind game situation, so we're not going to talk about that too much. But this pushes her out of the way so that the jab can't connect with you. See that? If you time it correctly. So there are a lot of different things that you can do, but hopefully it's starting to add up how we're using the training. Like I said, you have to know your Oki and your setups and stuff like that. And to the person that requested this, I'm going to send you a link to a different session for Chun-Li's Oki Zeme and her setups, because we don't want this session to be too overwhelmingly long, right? So I'm going to send you a link to the Oki setups that will show you how to structure her offense and all of the different combos that you can do and stuff like that. I'll send those links to you. Hopefully it'll be helpful for you to know how to structure your combos as well as your Oki Zeme and things of that nature. And yeah, hopefully this dojo session has been helpful with going through how to use the training room in order to set this up. Right. You see what we're doing? Like I said, you want to make sure you actually know your sequence, and once you have it down cold, then you can do stuff like this. This is what I would do in a real match. Only difference is that my opponent is not doing anything to actually hurt me, but defensively, this is pretty much along the lines of what you can expect real people to do. They're going to press buttons, and this is how you practice doing counter hit training, right? So, and you can also set a dummy to fight you, and just fight the dummy, the level 8 preferably. Right. Not optimal, but it doesn't matter. Interesting combo, Chun. Good with punish, Chun. Chun bot. That was one heck of a counter hit. Yeah. Get punish. That's fate. Like I said, sometimes I try to get away with that online. Sometimes it's good to take risks. If you're fighting somebody that's extremely deadly, then you obviously don't want to do that, but sometimes you can get away with that. It's simulating characters like Ken doing Jinrai loops or Marissa doing her armor punch after a target combo. Except it's unsafe if they do manage to block it. That's the main difference. See? See? Counter hits. I've gotten so used to doing this that my peripheral is just seeing a white flag show up, and then I'm just going with it from there. I'm not even looking over there. I just can tell when they get counter hit or not, because I've been practicing this so much, right? So, but let's go ahead and turn that bot off, and yeah, that's pretty much going to be that when it comes to setting up counter hits. And like I said, I'm going to send the link for Chun-Li's Okizeme and combo structure and things of that nature to you. That way, if you want to try to really look into things a little bit further. I went over some setups here. I went over counter hit bait setups like this. We went over some very rudimentary combos, things of that nature. But I'll send more in-depth dojo sessions to further help you if you need it. Last thing I wanted to touch up on before we end our session here is how to practice whiff punishing. Now, I don't want to go too much into detail with it, because this is something that I don't even have coming for the Master Series for quite some time yet, because it's something that just doesn't seem to be necessary until like Ultimate Master and later. However, if you really want to master it, that's cool, and it will give you an advantage against certain opponents if you become very proficient with it. Now, the main key reason why it's not something to worry about isn't just because this is a crouch, medium kick, drive, rush, cancel the game, throw a loop type of game. It's because punishing, doing whiff punishing is dependent upon your opponent. Obviously, if they do something crazy like this, that's a whiff punish that's going to come up. It's going to come up in games. Wow, that proximity guard is crazy. It's going to come up in games, and the better your opponent, the less likely it's going to happen. But this is the type of whiff punish that you're going to be getting, right? More often than not, something like this. And I messed that up. Interesting. Yep, something like that. Something like this. If she stops ducking underneath it, I think you get the point. That stuff is going to come up, but I think what we're talking about here is we're talking about footsies type of whiff punishing, and that's the type of idea that's going to be, that's something that you're not going to have to worry about too much. And the reason why is because it is opponent dependent. Something that I can tell you about in competitive games is you generally more often than not want to be proactive. Doing things reactively is dependent on the opponent. And if that is, it's fine if it's supplementary, but if it is your primary strategy and focus to try to win, That means that your chances of winning are in your opponent's control, which is not a good thing, right? That's the way you want to think about it. So if we're like, our opponent isn't playing footsies with you. You have an opponent that's just kind of just doing whatever the heck that they want. Let's go ahead and switch to like Ken. Ken is the poster boy of a character just doing whatever the freak that they want, right? And we're gonna head to recording settings and we're gonna record Ken doing some things, some empty slots. We're gonna have Ken do something like this. We're gonna have Ken do something like this. And we're gonna have Ken do something like this. Right. Those are the three settings we have recorded. So we have our replay settings here, and if you when you have the play recording, you can have it so you don't have to keep activating it again by setting repeat replay to always repeat playback, and make sure to keep replay play info display off so that you can't cheat. Right. So we're gonna keep that off. And then depending on your peripheral, we're going to go ahead and click for it to play the recording. For me, it's going to be the left thumbstick, or L3, on PlayStation. And he's doing all this, and we're trying to play footsies, and he's like, nah, I saw that, I'm just going to jump in, right? And you're like, man, what the heck? Because there's no, if you're not stopping all this stuff that he's doing right here, remember we said earlier, your opponent being plus in your face is helping them to win the game. That's pretty much what you're trying to do. Outside of getting your opponent in the corner, you're trying to have frame advantage in your opponent's face. Because if you have frame advantage in your opponent's face, you can make them guess if you're going to hit them or throw them. And if they have to guess whether you're going to hit them or throw them, then that means that you have a significant advantage over your opponent. That's why all of these things that I have Ken set here to do makes him plus in our face. Drive rushing, whether you block it or get hit, him jumping, and him doing heavy dragon dash, all of these make him plus in your face. This is why you see people doing this stuff all the time. They might not understand why, they just know good things happen for them when they do this. And the reason why is because you have to guess. Right. You can, just like we show with this move right here, counter hit. We show with the counter hit bait earlier. Let's get Ken to stop doing that. We showed with the counter hit bait earlier. This is the type of situation where you want to be in your opponent. Now, Chun-Li, unfortunately, much to our chagrin, she pushes them too far back to be able to throw them. You have to actually walk up to them, which means they can just jab you. Another reason why this character is not that strong, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But we go ahead and get Ken to do it again. This is stuff that you want to stop, right? You don't want him to be able to do this stuff. It's bad for business. Right. So if you can't stop them from doing that, they have no reason to play footsies with you. You play footsies with somebody when you're fighting somebody that's trying to do all this stuff, and you're like, no. Listen, it can be a little difficult to stop all of these options, but. Let me see, what am I set? Okay, I'm on 2 frames. I thought so. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. Sometimes you're going to get hit trying to stop this stuff. It's okay. Right. But you want to be able to stop it. Right. If you can stop them from doing things like this, they have 2 choices. They can either keep doing it and continue to be destroyed and lose, or they can earn their way into your space because you have just proven to be a fortress. You've just proven that they can't just walk up to you and do whatever the heck they want to. So once you're able to establish that, then you can start doing the whole footsies thing. Footsies is something that we can literally talk about for hours on end, multiple sessions, but for now, just know that footsies is probably what you're referring to and what you're thinking about when you're talking about whiff punishing. You're talking about getting your opponent to whiff a button and then punishing them for doing it, right? Now, how you practice the whiff punishing, like I said, we're not going to go into footsies, but if you really wanted to practice whiff punishing just somebody just doing something like this, and you wanted to just punish them for doing it, like so. How you can practice it is the first thing that you want to know is the skinny on whiff punishing, right? The idea that you want to do is the moment you see your opponent twitch, you want to have an idea of what you think they're going to do. It's going to take a lot of experience to really get what I'm saying here. But the moment you see them do something, you want to respond to it. A lot of pro players will do this. They don't. It's like, let's say if we get Ken to do something like this. Let's get rid of all of these options. And let's just have Ken do something like this. Like that. Pro players aren't going to be like, oh man, he just whiffed that. Let me just laser beam, just get him, right? They're not like, oh, he whiffed that. Let me get him now. They see you twitch, and then they do something the moment you twitch. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit more random. So notice how we set Ken here. Let's go ahead and set him a little bit better. Let's go ahead and set Ken to do this. And then we're going to record him to do this into a crouch medium punch. And we're going to head to replay settings, and we're going to make this first option, which is just him shimmying back and forth like so. We're going to set this to a random selection rate of 3. That way it's more likely to get selected. So this is going to simulate randomness a lot better. And let's try to whiff punish somebody. And you see how hard that is, right? See how fast that is? And we don't know when he's going to do it. So your goal here is the moment you see him twitch, you want to go for your whiff punish. The moment you see the animation for his arm twitching, which is going to be hard. See? I didn't even do it anywhere close to in time. See? That's hard. But this is what you kind of want to know what you expect them to do and then respond to it. It's hard to whiff punish that, right? It's easier to whiff punish something like this. Because you get plenty of time. Whoops, I messed that up. Suddenly having to push directions for her mess. It's going to be a little bit easier to whiff punish something like that. Because it takes them longer to recover. And I still failed there, as we can clearly see. Come on, kid, don't be shy. Man, he really is so random with the walking right now, Jesus. More so than normal. You want to make sure you stay out of range so you don't get hit in the face. Fortunately, I didn't get the punish there. I'm a little bit slower when it comes to the responsiveness time, and my focus is not completely on the task at hand, so I'm kind of encumbered at the moment, but hopefully you get the point with that. If we get rid of this random selection rate and put it back to 1, he's going to do it more often. So it's going to be a little bit easier to catch him. Right. Something like that, right? You want to make sure you're just out of their range so you don't get hit. You want to stay right out of their range. And you want to be close enough to try to catch their body. Because while you can catch their arm, like in the case of this right here, you can catch Ken's arm, but it retracts so quickly. But his body still has to recover. So if you're close enough, you're going to have an easier time catching the whiff if you're close enough to catch his actual body. As you can see, this is not an easy task. Especially if your mind isn't completely focused on it. That's specifically for freaking Chun because you have to actually push a direction. It actually slows her down. And something else is that if you didn't know, I do play with input delay here, and in the regular option setting, there's an input delay option on or off option. Now, if I shimmy back and forth, this should make it a little bit easier to catch him. Because it's kind of buffering the input a little bit. Right. And this is starting very, very basic. This is like very bare bones, easy mode, basic, right? And that's pretty much what you do. You can catch their limb, like I say, but it's really hard to do that unless you know for a fact they're going to do it. You want to try to be close enough to catch their body, right? But not too close where you're going to get hit. The crouch medium punch is a little hard to catch. Heavy punch is much easier. See? Plenty of time. I can catch his arm, but I have more time if I'm close enough to catch his body. Too slow. See? Whoops. See? Those are the key things that you want to keep in mind with that. And then as you have seen, we have the random selection rate. Put the random shimmy to 3, and then pick whatever options is that you want to do, and then just wait for him to twitch or do something, and just try to respond to it. And like I said, this is tough. See, that's very fast. This is the best way that you can really practice it because crouch medium punch is the fastest thing that you can realistically whiff punish. If you can whiff punish a crouch medium punch on the standard characters, a 6-frame crouch medium punch, you're going to be able to catch a heavy punch or a crouch medium. So we make it harder on ourselves by setting them to do the fastest thing within reason. Obviously, you don't want to do a jab because nobody's gonna whiff punish a jab, right? You're not gonna react with punish a jab. This does not happen. So this makes it harder. And you get used to doing this at this level. And then once you get better at doing this, you're able to catch them a few times and you feel like you're getting comfortable. Then you can move on to further levels. You might want to practice this consistently more often than not. It's probably not going to be a one and done training session. This is something you're probably going to want to drill in multiple sessions, probably at least once a day. If you're really dedicated, you really want to drill this in. Like I said, I'm having a little bit of trouble here despite my training. I'm pretty sure that if I really focus and took my headset off here, I could probably catch him doing this. That's something that I do to make it even more stressful is I will crank up the input delay and environment settings. It's like training with weights and then continue the same training. If you do train this, make sure that you turn it off before you practice any combos or anything that requires specific timing. This is only for specific maneuvers like anti-airing or catching whiffs that don't require the specific timing. Otherwise, you're just gonna mess up your muscle memory, right? So that's something that's for like when you get really proficient at catching these whiffs. You can also do things like add more recordings, like add so that Ken does something like this. For this. And you want to try to make sure that you keep the cadence about the same so that you can't tell what it is that they're doing just by the way that they're moving, right? You don't want that. And you can add all of these options, turn them all on, and then this is because it's going to be tricky because if you move the moment he twitches and he jumps, you can get blown up. This is simulating actual mental stack in a real game to some extent because if you do this, you can get hit in the face, right? So you want to practice getting used to understanding what it is that you're looking for and if you're willing to take the risk. That's a part of the reason why high-level players tell you to know what type of opponent you're fighting That way you can allocate your mental resources as they are needed. If you're fighting somebody that doesn't jump, you probably don't want to be looking for jumps too much. Right? If you're fighting somebody that never whiffs anything, you probably don't need to be trying to play footsies with them or whiff punishing them. Right? So defense is all about response, and that's part of the reason why it's difficult, because you can't control your opponent. Unless, but we're not going to talk about controlling a match here. But I think you get the point, right? And we were able to catch that whiff. Got that one. He would have got hit if I got it, because I responded literally the moment he did it. And I got caught by a jump. And that's what pros do, pretty much. They watch for the exact thing that you do. They have a good read on what it is that you like to do, and then the moment you twitch, they're pressing something. They're staying just out of your range, and then the moment they see you do a move, they're pushing their move. They're not waiting to confirm that you whiffed it first. Right? That's how they're able to do it so consistently. And sometimes you'll make the wrong choice and you'll get hit in the face by a jump in. And this can be used to help you practice just holding neutral in general. While you're trying to catch whiffs, you could try to stave off jump ins as well. Right? This is tricky. That's why I mentioned that trying to catch whiff punishes and footsies is not something you need to be too worried about. Because a lot of people don't do this. This is not something that comes up a lot. People just whiffing normals, and a lot of people just try to skip neutral. They try to drive rush, they try to jump, they try to drag in dash, they try to do things like that, right? That's pretty much what they're trying to do. And I'm messing this up right now. It's okay. And miss time. And made wrong decision. Gotcha. Whiff. Oops. See? And it's tricky. It's very hard. Especially if you don't have blazing reaction speed, right? But with proper training, you can do it. And like I said, you can use the lag to add more stress to it, to make it more difficult, which is going to force you to really compensate, because this is going to be like playing with a weighted vest. Everything's going to be so much slower, right? And the other option I was mentioning is if you go over to basic settings options, and we scroll over to graphic settings, the last setting here, input delay reduction, if you set that to off, it's going to add even more lag. So I have it set to off. So right now I am cranked up to like the max lag that I can get with the training room options, right? That option that I just mentioned in the basic settings, this applies to online as well. So remember that. But this setting for the environment settings, this is only in the lab. And it's very important because it's very useful to make sure you can get your muscle memory to match the online environment that you play in as much as possible. But I also use it to just make things more difficult, as you can see here, when practicing stopping these things. But you want to be careful. If you do this option, you don't want to, if you're going to practice whiffing, whiff punishing, you don't want to do whiff punishing into follow-up, because it will mess up your muscle memory. This has a specific timing. You want to make sure that you have your training room input delay set to which you expect it to always be to if you're going to do a whiff punish into any combos. Anything that requires timing, you do not want to switch and turn on the input delay unless you plan to always be training in 5 frames of input delay. If you're training in 2 frames of input delay and you're just turning it up temporarily, if you catch your opponent whiffing, just whiff punish them with this. Or this, or whatever button it is. But do not follow up with the combo or anything like that, because it will mess up your muscle memory, and you don't want that, right? So sometimes you might mess it up once or twice. You might do something like this because I'm so used to training and doing that. But you don't want it to be a consistent habit, right? Yeah. This will, if you turn off all the delay, it would be much easier. But if you turn this to 0 and turn off the other input delay, that would be simulating playing in an offline tournament environment, which we're not playing in. So we don't want that, right? We want to simulate what we're going to be playing in as much as we can. That's how you get close to perfect practice. And then we're gonna turn the lag back up again, and we didn't catch that whiff. It's okay. Like I said, this is very difficult, especially if you're not solely concentrating on it. Hopefully that's making sense on how we do that. Like I said, it's a little bit tough to do this, but it's very good training. You can use this type of stuff to practice dealing with drive rushing, people jumping, drive impact, etc. Right. So those are some of the ways that you can use the training room in order to practice these things. Just to summarize, we went over the basic synopsis of what counter hitting and punish counters are and why we want to do them. We went over Chun-Li and specifically why she needs to be able to do this very effectively. And then we also went over very basic combo structure as well as offensive structure. We went over how to train and utilize the training room in order to set up using counter hits in multiple different ways. And we also went over with punishing. We did not go too far into setups like Okizeme, but I do have a link to a previous dojo session that will be hopefully prove to be more helpful because it will be more detailed into all of your options and how to think about Okizeme and what it is in general, right? So, but that's going to be it for this dojo session. I do want to thank you all very much for attending. Thank you very much to the player that made this specific request. It was a very fun venture making this. If you have any questions regarding this dojo session, or any concerns or comments or feedback, feel free to leave that in the comment section below, or you can meet me on the Chun-Li subreddit as well. Feel free to like the video if you like it, subscribe if you're willing. This is going to be Sage Armageddon signing out. Have an awesome day. Take care.